day. If you've got a fan nearby, flick it on. Let low hum wrap around you. Dim the lights a little. Sink back in your seat. You don't need much for this one. Just some quiet. Maybe a glass of something old, something earned. And if you're watching this at 2 a.m., maybe spoon halfway into a cereal box. Know that you're in good company. Tonight, we're not just telling a story. We're stepping into the smoke and sweat of a legend Alexander. Yes, that Alexander. The boy who whispered to horses and shouted at gods. The man who carved a path from Macedon to the edges of the known world, dragging empires behind him like shadows. But before the swords, before the sieges, before the silk-robed generals saluting under desert suns, there was a quiet, a cold morning, a bowl of barley gruel, and a boy. Not yet great, just awake, just hungry. This is his story, not in triumphs, but in tastes, in silences, in the breath before battle. So lean in. Let's begin. The fire's low. It crackles in the early dark like it's whispering secrets only the kitchen stones can hear. Somewhere beyond the heavy wooden shutters, a wind stirs the hills of Pella, nudging the last of the stars into hiding. It's cold, not the brutal cold of a blizzard, but the stubborn, damp chill of a Macedonian morning that clings to your bones and won't let go until noon. In the corner of the royal kitchen, barley bubbles softly in a bronze pot. Steam rises in slow spirals, catching what little light there is, a kind of ghost dancing above the breakfast of kings, or rather the breakfast of a boy who would be king. Alexander, not yet the Great, is 12, maybe 13. His hair still wild from sleep, his tunic half-fastened. He sits cross-legged near the hearth, eyeing the bowl in front of him like it's something he'll have to fight. And in a way, it is. The gruel is plain. Barley boiled in goat's milk and water, salted enough to bite back. It sticks to the spoon, resists movement. It's food for strength, not joy. Food meant to make a spine sturdy, not a heart glad. Every noble boy in Macedon eats it, but not every boy imagines empires while choking it down. He takes a bite, chews, swallows. The warmth spreads slowly, reluctantly, like the food itself is unsure if it wants to help. There are olives on the side. Black, oily, bitter. Bread, too, made of coarse emmer flour. It crumbles rather than tears, the crust rough like pumice. A wedge of goat cheese sits beside it, veined and angry-looking, its scent sharp enough to bring tears to your eyes. Or maybe that's just the cold. His mother Olympias isn't here. She never is at breakfast. Too much scheming to do, too many dreams of destiny to whisper into temple fires. His father, Philip, might already be half-drunk or half-dressed for war, depending on the day. So Alexander eats alone, surrounded by the quiet clatter of servants pretending not to notice him. He's just a boy, but not really. There's something in his eyes. Not the stare of a child, but the measured gaze of someone already asking questions he shouldn't be. What lies beyond the mountains? How far can a man walk before he forgets where he began? Why must we eat the same thing every morning if the gods gave us so many flavors? He doesn't speak these thoughts, but they flicker behind every chew. Aristotle hasn't arrived yet. The great philosopher is rarely early, and when he is, he brings scrolls that smell like dust and ideas too big for morning light. But even without him, Alexander is learning. From the taste of the earth in his bread, from the silence after the last spoonful of gruel, from the way the world feels before it fills with orders, weapons, and war cries. There's wine, too. Barely wine, really. More like tinted water, diluted to weakness, pale and harmless. Macedonians believed only savages drank it pure. Even children drank this version, not for pleasure, but for ritual. A nod to the gods, a sip toward adulthood. He takes one now, lets it sit on his tongue. It tastes like time, like something old and slightly sad. He finishes the meal, sets the bowl aside, and stands. The robe slips from one shoulder, catching briefly on his elbow. A reminder that his limbs are still learning how to carry the weight of a body destined for legend. Outside, the sun is beginning to bruise the edge of the horizon. The sky softens, then glows, a slow awakening, not unlike his own. Alexander steps into it, into the cold, the promise, the prophecy. His boots crunch on the frost-laced stones. Somewhere in the distance a horn sounds, faint, like a memory. It's a signal, or maybe just a call to morning drills. But to him, it's something else. A starting line. There will be many more breakfasts. Some eaten in tents under siege. Some in palaces draped in Persian silk. Some in silence after too much blood. But this one, this forgotten bowl of barley on a chill Macedonian morning, is where it begins. Not with glory, but with hunger. The stable smells of hay, sweat, and something older. The scent of warm earth soaked deep into wood, like secrets held too long. It's not quite dawn yet, but the grooms are already at work, brushing down the royal horses with quick, practiced strokes. Hooves shuffle. Leather creaks. Muffled voices trade gossip in tones too low for a prince to acknowledge, but not so low he can't hear. Alexander walks between the stalls in silence. He doesn't announce himself. He never does. Let them speak. Let them forget he's there and show their truths when they think no one's watching. He stops in front of a particular stall, the one no one enters without permission or protection. Inside stands a creature that looks more myth than animal. Bucephalus. The horse is enormous, jet black except for a star-shaped mark on its forehead, like a fragment of night fell and refused to leave. Most say it's unrideable, too wild, too proud, too dangerous. It had already thrown half the stable hands and a few unlucky nobles. Philip nearly gave up and ordered it sold. But Alexander, he saw something else. Now, as the beast paws at the ground and tosses its head, the boy steps closer. There's no saddle, no reins, just tension, raw and waiting. The grooms edge back, whispering. "He'll break his neck," someone says. He's just a boy. But Alexander isn't listening. He's watching the horse's eyes. Not the muscles, not the hooves. The eyes, wild, yes, but not angry. Not unkind, just afraid. The sun glints low on the horizon, and as it does, the light hits Bucephalus in the face. The horse flinches, rears slightly. Alexander steps back, but not far. And then, in a voice calmer than the air itself, he speaks. He's afraid of his own shadow. A simple truth, but one no one else had seen. Slowly, gently, he takes the bridle, leads the animal away from the sun, so its shadow falls behind rather than beside. The crowd is silent now. Even the horses nearby have gone still. Alexander mounts. There's no grand motion, no flourish, just a quiet, steady climb into the unknown. And then, like the first step of dream, they move. Not in chaos, not in panic, but in harmony. The boy and the beast. The hooves strike the earth like drum beats. Rhythm, power, grace. Bucephalus runs and Alexander rides, not like he owns the animal, but like they were always meant to meet in motion. They race past the stables, past the training grounds, past the confused and breathless soldiers too stunned to cheer. Dust rises behind them like a ghost. When they finally return, the silence is thunderous. Philip. Dust rises behind them like a ghost. When they finally return, the silence is thunderous. Philip, watching from a nearby rise, is still, his face unreadable. This man, who carved a kingdom with iron and blood, who'd seen 100 warriors fall trying what his son just did, doesn't speak at first. Then, in a voice that carries like prophecy, he says, "My son, find yourself a kingdom big enough. Macedonia is too small for you." And that moment, spoken like a blessing, tastes like something more. Not just pride, not just awe, but fear. Because Philip sees it now, in full. The fire behind his son's eyes. The unstoppable pull of destiny. This wasn't just a boy taming a horse. It was something older. A covenant with fate. A boy made whole in motion. A future sprinting toward the world. Later that night, alone in his chambers, Alexander doesn't sleep. He lies awake, replaying every breath, every hoofbeat. Outside his window, the stars spin. He wonders what lands lie beneath them. What people? What gods? He isn't thinking of conquest, not yet. Just of movement. Of the way the wind felt against his skin when he stopped being small. It won't be the last time a king underestimates him. It won't be the last time silence falls after he defies the impossible. But tonight, he smiles into the dark. Because now he knows something the world has yet to learn. There's no such thing as unrideable. Only the unseen. Only the untamed. Only the beginning. The halls of the palace in Pella are colder than the hills outside. Not in temperature, but in memory. The kind of cold that comes from stone walls built too thick and words left too long unspoken. Echoes linger here. Whispers get trapped between marble columns. Truths are buried deeper than gold. Alexander walks them often, barefoot when he can, to feel the chill, to remind himself he's real. Servants scatter as he passes, not out of fear, but caution. He is the prince, yes, son of a king feared across Hellas, but he's also the son of Olympias. And Olympias is a name said quietly, even when she's not near. She prays with snakes, they say, sleeps in a bed of incense and omens, talks to the gods like they owe her something. To Alexander, she is warmth and thunder, a mother who kisses his forehead with lips that smell of ash and rose oil, who holds him tight even when her hands are trembling from rage or ritual. She tells him stories no tutor dares repeat, of his bloodline, not just from kings but from gods. Achilles is in his bones, she says, Dionysus in his breath. Her eyes burn when she speaks of it, like she's remembering something too ancient for language. Never forget, she says, fingers tightening around his wrist. Your father gave you your name, but I gave you your fate. And Alexander believes her, not out of naivety, but instinct. Because sometimes, in the dark, when sleep won't come and the wind hisses through the shutters, he feels it. That pull, that echo, like someone long dead is calling his name across time. Still, it isn't easy, being both son and symbol. Philip expects obedience, strength, discipline. He trains his son not like a prince, but a soldier. Spears at dawn, sparring until bruises bloom like ink under the skin. There's no softness in his father's love, only approval measured in nods and battlefield metaphors. One morning, after a particularly brutal drill, Alexander's lip is split and his eye is swelling. He says nothing, just stands there, holding the wooden sword like it's part of his arm. Philip nods. Pain teaches, it sharpens. Alexander nods too, but his mind is somewhere else. In Troy, in Persia, in places yet unnamed. He doesn't need sharpening. He needs freedom. And then there is Aristotle. He arrives without ceremony. Just a satchel of scrolls, a dust-stained robe, and eyes that look like they've seen the beginning of thought itself. Alexander is wary at first. He's had tutors before. Men who quoted Homer and wilted in the sun. But this one is different. Aristotle does not just teach. He dissects. He listens. He challenges. Why do you think the stars move? He asks one morning as the wind rattles the olive trees outside their study. Alexander replies with what he's been told, that the gods push them across the sky. Aristotle smiles, slow and dry. And if the gods sleep? The question hangs in the air like smoke. Alexander says nothing, but something shifts. From that moment, the world begins to crack open. Aristotle teaches him about logic, about ethics, about the soul and the body, and how every question births more questions. He reads him Herodotus and Anaxagoras, tells him of lands beyond Egypt where the rivers run backward and gold is sifted from the sand. He introduces him to the idea that there are patterns in chaos, that even war, even fate, has shape. And more than that, he listens to Alexander's dreams. Doesn't laugh when the boy says he wants to see the edge of the world. Doesn't flinch when he asks whether gods can die, or if a man can outrun his destiny. Instead, he asks, and if you reach the end of the world, what then? Alexander answers without hesitation, I'd keep going. At night, he lies beneath the stars, scrolls open beside him, thoughts racing like chariots. He studies the maps until the ink blurs, not just to learn, but to feel where he hasn't yet been, to know that beyond every border is another, waiting to be redrawn. He isn't content to inherit. He wants to create. And slowly, silently, the boy with barley gruel in his belly and godfire in his blood becomes something else. Not yet a conqueror, but no longer just a prince. The palace no longer fits. Its rooms are too small, its shadows too long. He begins to look past it, past Macedon, past his father's wars, past his mother's visions, toward a world still sleeping, still waiting. One night he dreams of fire, not destruction, illumination, cities lit not by torches but by his name. And when he wakes, he doesn't tell anyone. He just walks to the window, places a hand against the cold stone sill, and watches the stars until morning. The smell of iron lingers on his hands. It always does after training, sweat and dust baked into his skin by the Macedonian sun. The blisters have stopped forming. Now his palms are calloused, like the leather of his boots, like the hide of the earth itself. Still young, yes, but his body is already learning what it means to carry weight. Not just of swords, but of silence, of expectation. The training fields stretch behind the palace like a forgotten promise. Broken shields, dented helmets, chalk lines drawn into the dirt only to be trampled an hour later. It's not the arena of legends, not yet. But it's where Alexander first learns how to fall, and more importantly, how to rise. He is not the biggest, not the strongest, but he remembers every movement, every pattern, and he studies his opponents like he studies maps, finding weakness in the folds. There is no room for mercy here, not even for a prince. The other boys, noble sons with names as sharp as their blades, do not hold back. Some hate him, too proud, too clever. Others fear him, too silent, too watchful. But none ignore him. On one brutal afternoon, the sun high and merciless, he takes a blow to the ribs that sends him sprawling. The boy who struck him grins, already turning away, assuming victory. But Alexander doesn't stay down. He never does. He lunges from the dust like a spark reigniting, tackles the boy with a fury that surprises even himself. He doesn't stop until the trainer pulls them apart, blood on both their lips. Afterward, he sits alone beneath the olive trees, breath ragged, vision pulsing with light and pain. A shadow falls across him. His father. Philip doesn't speak at first. He just stands there, one hand on the hilt of his sword, the other resting on his hip like a judgment in human form. His crown is off, just a man now, not a king. And yet, the weight of his presence is heavier than any metal. "You don't fight like a soldier," Philip says finally. "You fight like you've got something to prove." Alexander doesn't look up. "Maybe I do." Philip sits beside him, surprising them both. The silence stretches. "You'll have enemies," he says. "More than you can count, but don't make war a habit. Make it a decision." Alexander frowns. "Then why do you fight?" Philip's eyes narrow, not with anger, with memory. "I fight because I was born into dust. I made Macedon with my fists, my sword, my blood. There was no other way." Alexander turns to him. "And what if there is another way?" Philip studies him for a long time. Then he stands. "Then you'll have to prove it." And he walks away. The sun begins to fall. The wind picks up, dragging shadows across the field. Alexander stays there long after everyone else has gone. He traces lines in the dirt with his finger. Battle formations, city walls, rivers yet unnamed. He draws not like a boy at play, but like an architect whispering to the future. That night at dinner, he eats little. The barley bread tastes of ash, the olives too bitter. Even the diluted wine feels heavy on his tongue. The hall is loud with voices, generals boasting, ministers laughing, foreign emissaries murmuring in clipped tones. But all he hears is silence. His mother watches him across the table, her eyes narrow and gleaming like a priestess in a trance. She sees the way his gaze drifts, not to the food, not to the gold on the walls, but to the great map hanging behind Philip's seat. The one that shows Macedon at the center of the world. Alexander knows now it's a lie. The center is always where the eye wants it to be. Later, he stands before that map alone, the torches casting shifting light across parchment and ink. His fingers trace the borders of Persia, the coastlines of Egypt, the roads to India. Each line is a story not yet told, a step not yet taken. He whispers to no one, "This will not be enough." And in that moment, the air shifts, not with wind, not with sound, but with something older, something watching. Maybe it's the gods, maybe it's just ambition, waking up. Either way, something in him answers, not with fear, but with hunger. The rain begins softly, a whisper on the rooftops, a hush against the palace stones. Pella rarely weeps like this. Most storms here come loud, thunder-backed and unruly, cracking across the sky like Zeus himself had something to say. But tonight, it falls like memory, slow, deliberate, full of weight. Alexander stands by the window, fingers pressed to the glass. The torches behind him flicker, shadows stretching long across the floor. He's 16 now, just old enough to be sent to war, just young enough to still be called boy in the wrong room. But he knows something no one else does. Not his father, not the generals, not even Aristotle. He knows what it feels like to burn quietly. Outside, the courtyard pools with rainwater. Soldiers shuffle through it, wet leather sticking to their skin, shields slick with the storm. He watches them, how they move, how they speak. There's no ceremony in their steps, just habit, the rhythm of men who've killed and survived and woken up to do it again. He wonders, do they dream of home, or does home become the thing you forget to want? His own home is changing, shifting beneath his feet. Philip has taken another wife, again. A younger one this time, Macedonian, noble. Eurydice, they call her. Pretty, poised, a perfect political knot. But it's not the marriage that rattles Alexander. It's the toast. At the feast, wine flowing and music bleeding through the hall, a nobleman stood, lifted his cup, and said, "May Philip and Eurydice bear a legitimate heir." The word hit the air like a dagger. Sharp, intentional, poisoned with implication. Olympias went still. Alexander gripped his goblet so tightly it cracked. And Philip laughed. That laugh was worse than anger, worse than insult. Because in it, Alexander heard something hollow, something familiar. The sound a father makes when he dares the world to challenge him. Alexander stood, not because he had something to prove, but because he had something to protect. He hurled his cup straight at the nobleman's face. It shattered like prophecy. Wine and blood mixed on marble. Philip rose furious, his words slurred with drink. "Do you challenge me, boy?" And Alexander, breath like ice, spine like fire, looked him dead in the eye. "You made me your son. Now suffer the son you made." The silence afterward was the kind that tightens the throat, a silence you can drown in. Philip, enraged, lunged, tried to draw his sword. But he stumbled, drunk, half-blind, swaying like a fallen statue. He collapsed in front of them all, and Alexander, stone-faced, watched him fall. That night, he left the palace, rode out into the storm without a guard, without a cloak, just him and the road, the hooves of his horse swallowed by the mud, the world lit only by lightning. For days he wandered the countryside, refusing shelter. He slept beneath trees, drank from rivers, let the wild remind him who he was without a throne beneath him. It wasn't punishment. It was clarity. When he returned, the court stared as though seeing a ghost. But Philip said nothing. No apology, no scorn. Just a glance, brief, calculating, as if weighing a sword he once forged, now wondering if he could still lift it. Olympias embraced her son like a prophet returned from exile. "You will not be his shadow," she whispered. "You will be the storm that swallows his name." Alexander didn't answer, because deep down he already knew. He didn't want to destroy Philip. He wanted to surpass him, and that is always more dangerous. The rain still falls. Outside, the torches lining the palace gates hiss and gutter. Inside, Alexander turns from the window, jaw set like granite. Somewhere, far beyond these walls, Persia stretches wide and glittering, a dream of empires and immortality. But he's not ready, not yet. Not until the old world finally breaks beneath the weight of the new one. Not until he earns it. And for that, he will need time. He will need patience. He will need war. There's blood on the sand. Not fresh, not anymore. But it clings to the memory of the place. You can feel it in the wind, in the cracked bones buried beneath the soil, in the way the air tenses when men gather with swords in hand. The battlefield near Cheronea doesn't look like much now, just another stretch of dirt and rock. But here, the old world tilted, just slightly, as if the gods themselves leaned in to watch. Alexander is 18, and today he will kill men with names, men with families, men who call themselves free. The Greeks, proud, fractured, desperate to hold on to an idea of unity they barely believe in, have gathered to face Philip and his army. City-states that once warred with each other now stand shoulder to shoulder, bound by fear more than faith. They call Macedon a threat to democracy, a northern beast, a kingdom of half-civilized tyrants with too much ambition and not enough restraint. Alexander hears all of it and remembers, because now he stands beside his father, armor gleaming, eyes cold. No longer the boy with bruised knuckles and dreams tucked in scrolls. Philip places him on the left flank, a position not of honor but test. Let the boy prove himself in blood. He does. The fighting begins just after sunrise. The grass is still wet, dew mixing with the mud as metal finds flesh. Swords ring out like bells tolling the end of an age. Alexander leads the charge. His cavalry crashes into the sacred band of Thebes, elite warriors, lovers in arms, men who swore to die beside each other rather than yield. They do not falter easily. They fight like lions cornered, like brothers bound by fire. But Alexander fights like a man possessed, not reckless, but chosen. He moves through the chaos like water through stone, fluid, sharp, unstoppable. The sun catches in his bronze-plated chest, his horse screaming beneath him, his blade flashing like a thought made real. When he breaks through the Theban line, he doesn't stop. He drives deeper, past the noise, past the fear, into the heart of the enemy, where names no longer matter, only breath and bone. Menfal. Some cry out, others don't have the time. There is no glory in the killing, no music, no clean cuts. Only the hot stench of blood, the sting of sweat in his eyes, the ache in his shoulder as sword meets shield again and again. He is no longer Alexander of Macedon. He is simply motion. When the dust settles, the field is quiet, except for the crows. They always come. The Greeks retreat, broken, stunned. The sacred band lies where it stood. Not a single man fled, not a single man surrendered. Philip walks the field afterward, his generals whispering, the sun high and cruel overhead. He passes the fallen Thebans, their bodies curled around each other, arms still reaching even in death. He turns to his son. Alexander stands apart, blood-soaked, silent, hands trembling slightly at his sides. His eyes, though, are steady. Philip says nothing, just nods. It's all he needs to say. That night, there is no feast, no celebration. Alexander sits alone beneath a tree, unarmored, barefoot, fingers tracing lines in the dirt. He draws nothing in particular. Just shapes, waves, circles, symbols he doesn't yet understand. Aristotle once told him, the soul remembers what the body forgets. Maybe that's why his hands won't stop moving. He's not thinking about victory, not about praise, not even about the men he killed. He's thinking about what comes next. Because with the Greeks crushed, the door to Asia is creaking open. Persia waits across the sea, massive, ancient, divine in the way only empires can pretend to be. Most men would fear it, some would bow to it. But Alexander feels something else entirely. Invitation. He lies back, staring at the stars, listening to the earth still hum with the day's violence. And he wonders, not for the first time, what does the world look like when you are the storm? The air in Agi is heavy, not with heat, though the summer clings stubbornly to every stone wall and silk curtain, but with something older, something slow, silent, and coiled like a waiting blade. Whispers move through the palace like smoke. Eyes linger too long. Servants move faster. Doors close softer. Something is coming. Everyone feels it. Alexander walks the halls like a ghost, still too young to be king, already too old to be anyone's son. The celebration has begun. A wedding again. Another one of Philip's tangled political knots. Another alliance carved from the body of diplomacy. The guests are noble, foreign, dangerous. The amphitheater echoes with song and steel. Horses parade through the dust, and wineskins empty faster than the amphorae can be brought from the cellars. But beneath it all, a pulse, unease. Even Olympias is absent tonight. She's been sent away. Too dramatic, they said, too dangerous. No one sends her anywhere unless Philip wants her gone. Alexander knows. He always knows. His father is at the center of it all. Broad-chested, crowned, drunk on power and prophecy. The king who tamed Macedon, the warrior who broke the Greek spine, the man who taught Alexander how to lift a sword and how to carry a silence. Philip enters the theater to applause. The crowd rises, the nobles bow, the soldiers cheer. And then it happens. A flash, a scream, and the sudden, sickening absence of noise. The blade strikes Philip through the ribs fast and deep. There is no fight, no time. Only blood, red, thick, spreading across the king's tunic like spilled wine. The assassin is one of his own guards. Pausanias, loyal, trusted. No one understands why, not yet. Alexander is still, frozen in the moment, like a wax figure set in fire. He watches as the man who cast the longest shadow in his world crumples into the dust. And just like that, the world breaks. There's a rush. Guards swarming, guests fleeing, screams echoing through marble and sand. The assassin is hunted down before the blood even cools. Some say it was personal. Some say it was political. Some say Olympias pulled the strings from the shadows. Maybe it was all of it. Maybe none. But in that moment, none of it matters. Because Philip, the king, the father, the invincible, is dead. Alexander doesn't cry, he doesn't shout, he doesn't run. He walks forward one step at a time through the blur of panic and smoke. He kneels beside the body. The eyes are still open, still watching. He reaches out slowly and closes them. The court is in chaos. Allies begin whispering of succession. Generals clutch their swords a little tighter. The old men who sat comfortably at Philip's table now weigh their futures like gamblers eyeing the dice. And in the center of it all, a boy stands in the skin of a man. He says nothing that night, just returns to his chamber, where he stares at the map on the wall. The world looks smaller now. Not because it is, but because the man who once filled it is gone. And the silence that follows his death isn't mourning. It's anticipation. The next morning, Alexander walks into the council chamber alone. No guards, no mother, no advisors. He looks each general in the eye. Men who've known war, who've buried friends, who've seen kings rise and fall. He says only one sentence. If any of you thinks he should be king instead of me, step forward now. No one moves, because in his voice they hear it, not threat, not plea, but destiny, and that's always the sharpest weapon in the room. Outside, the people gather. A boy has become a king. A prince has become a question. And across the sea, Persia stirs, unaware that the fire has already begun. The throne still smells like him. Oiled leather, faint wine, the musk of a man who wore victory like a second skin. Alexander sits in it for the first time. Not as a son, not as a shadow, but as a king. And it doesn't feel like triumph. It feels heavy, ancient, as if the stone remembers every man who sat before him, every lie they told, every war they bled. His crown is simpler than legend would have you believe. No jewels, just gold shaped like a wreath, a nod to the gods, or a joke about their approval. He wears it lightly, like he knows it doesn't make him immortal, only accountable. Macedon is quiet but not at peace. Philip is barely buried, and already the wolves are howling. Rivals, once quiet, now find their voices. City-states smell blood. Old enemies sharpen old blades. The Illyrians rise. The Tribali stir in the north. Even within his own court, loyalties fray like old rope. They see a boy, a flicker, a moment to strike before the flame catches. But they forget something. Alexander was not made in the image of peace. He rides north. No coronation ceremony, no royal speeches, just armor, steel, and silence. The army follows, not because they are loyal, but because they remember Cheronea. They remember the boy who didn't blink when men twice his age died beside him. He moves like a storm with purpose. The Illyrians, drunk on opportunity, are not prepared. They fall fast, their chieftains scrambling for deals that come too late. Alexander razes their strongholds, burns their banners, and leaves nothing behind but warning. He does not ask for respect. He teaches it. Then, the Tribali, fierce, savage, proud. They laugh when they hear he's coming. By the time he leaves, their villages are ash and their warriors broken. He crosses the Danube, not because he needs to, but because no Macedonian ever has. He builds a fleet from scratch, outmaneuvers an entire tribe on water, and fights them on a riverbank under a sky too wide to comprehend. His men say the gods must be with him, but Alexander never looks up. He's not asking the heavens for anything. He intends to take it. Word spreads like fire across the continent. The boy is no boy. The king bleeds enemies. The throne, it turns out, fits him perfectly. He returns south in a blaze of smoke and dust. Not just as a ruler, but as something else. Something harder to name. A force. But the gods aren't finished testing him. Then worse. Thrace rebels. Thebes, again. Once proud. He crushes once them. Broken. Now arrogant enough to rise again. Whispering treason in Athens' ear. They think Macedon is still mourning. That this is their moment to reclaim the past. Alexander does not send warnings. He marches, 30,000 strong. He surrounds the city in silence. Gives them one chance, surrender. The Thebans laugh, mock. They call him a tyrant's son, a bastard king, and then the gates open, not to yield, but to charge, the final insult. What happens next will stain history like a wound that never closes. The walls fall, the resistance collapses. Alexander orders no mercy. The city is taken, its defenders slaughtered. 6,000 dead. 30,000 enslaved. Thebes, the city of myth, of Hercules, of poetry and pride, is erased. In its place, silence. He leaves only one structure standing, the house of Pindar, the poet who once praised Philip. A message, carved in ruin, that memory lives, but rebellion dies. The world gasps. Athens falls quiet. No one rises again. He is no longer just king of Macedon. He is heir to Greece, master of the fractured spine his father once beat into unity. And beyond the Aegean, across the waters, Persia waits. They don't know it yet, but the storm is already on its way. The sea is calm, too calm, like it's holding its breath, watching the horizon, waiting for something unnatural to rise from the east. On the Macedonian coast, ships creak softly in their moorings, galleys loaded with armor, horses, grain, and dreams too large for any one kingdom to contain. It's the spring of 334 BCE. Alexander is 22, and he is no longer coming for survival or security or the shaky peace of a fractured Greece. He is coming for the world. 10 years ago, Persia stood untouchable, a vast empire of gold, silk, and kings who thought themselves gods. They ruled from the Nile to the Indus, commanded legions of men and bent nations to their will without ever drawing a blade. But empires, like mountains, crack from within before they fall from without. And Alexander knows this. He's studied the fault lines. He's memorized the weaknesses. He's listened to the whispers of dissent, the slow rot of luxury and bureaucracy that dulls even the sharpest blades. He's seen the pride, the soft underbelly of ancient power. Now he sharpens his own edge. He stands on the shore at Abydos, gazing eastward, wind tugging at his cloak, the salt of destiny drying on his lips. Behind him, 37,000 men, a patchwork army of Macedonians, Greeks, Thracians, and mercenaries who once fought for gold, but now follow something harder to name. Ahead, Asia, the great unknown, the land of Cyrus, of Xerxes, of Darius III, the current king, cloaked in silk and surrounded by shadows. Alexander steps aboard his flagship. The sails unfurl. The invasion of Persia begins. They land at Troy, not by coincidence, but by intention. Because Alexander doesn't just want to conquer, he wants to inherit. To stitch his name into the same tapestry as Achilles and Hector. To walk the dust where gods once fought and heroes bled. He lays a wreath on Achilles' tomb and whispers a prayer, not of humility, but kinship. "You were lucky," he says softly. "You had Homer to sing your name." The implication is unspoken. Now it's my turn. His first real challenge is not a myth, but a man. The Persian satraps of Asia Minor, waiting near the river Granicus with a force confident in its size and tradition. Alexander does what he always does. He moves first. Before dawn, he arranges his army, rides the line, speaks not of empire, but of glory. His voice is calm, not booming, not theatrical, but certain. The kind of certainty that makes doubt shrink in the hearts of tired men. And then he charges, straight into the river. The Persians don't expect it. No one expects it. Not then, not ever. Because no sane commander risks everything at the start. No general leads the charge himself, but Alexander does. And when his horse stumbles on the slippery riverbed and arrows whistle past his neck, he doesn't flinch. He presses forward, chest to chest, sword to bone. The fighting is brutal. Not like the clean strokes of legend, but the chaos of mud, water, and screaming flesh. Macedonian phalanxes lock in behind him, shields flashing, pikes punching through cavalry lines like teeth through silk. Alexander takes a spear through the shoulder. He rips it out himself. Keeps fighting. By nightfall, the Persians are broken, their satraps dead, their lines shattered. The river runs red, and the west of Asia Minor lies exposed. It's not just a victory, it's a statement. The gods are watching. The world is watching. And Alexander doesn't blink. In the towns that follow, Sardis, Ephesus, Miletus, the gates begin to open without a fight. The Persian garrisons surrender. Some join him. Others vanish into the dark. He frees the Greek cities under Persian rule, but not because he's a liberator, because they'll remember it. Because loyalty bought with mercy is stronger than fear, at least for now. But make no mistake, this is not democracy. This is not peace. This is the beginning of something colder. At night in his tent, he doesn't sleep much. He walks the maps. His fingers trace the rivers and ranges of an empire too large for even the sky to cover. He speaks to Hephaestion, his closest companion, not in grand speeches, but in quiet questions. How far do you think it goes? Do you think they dream of us too? He doesn't want answers. He wants horizons. Because Persia isn't just a place to conquer. It's a mirror. And Alexander, deep down, wants to see what kind of god looks back when a man walks through fire and refuses to burn. Dust settles like ash on a fallen temple. The cities of Asia Minor lie behind him now, quiet and conquered, some grateful, some simmering, all changed. Alexander does not linger. He moves eastward like a fever, pulling his army across the bones of old satrapies toward the beating heart of the Persian Empire. The land begins to shift. The roads grow rougher, the language stranger, the gold heavier. Mountains rise where the sea once whispered, and the air turns thin with altitude and ambition. Each mile feels like a step away from the world he knew and deeper into something older, something watchful. Persian scouts vanish into the hills. Their shadows remain. He pushes on. By the time he reaches the plains near Gordion, the rumors have already arrived ahead of him. The boy king who rides like a god, whose eyes hold lightning, whose blade never rests. The Phrygians greet him not with resistance but curiosity, offering him gifts, food, and a riddle. The cart is still there, a weathered relic tied to an ancient yoke with a knot so tangled, so impossibly twisted, that legend says only the man who can untie it will rule all of Asia. It's a test, or a trap, or both. Alexander circles it once, twice, says nothing. He doesn't fiddle with the cord, doesn't frown or ponder, doesn't treat it like a puzzle or a poem. Instead, he draws his sword, and with one clean, ringing stroke, he cuts the knot in half. The crowd gasps. The priests murmur. The wind stills. He smiles, not out of arrogance, but something colder. A message carved into history. It doesn't matter how the knot is undone, only that it is. It's not myth-making, it's strategy. And it works. Even the gods fall silent. From Gordion, the campaign continues. East, always east. But now Persia responds. Darius III, the King of Kings, awakens. A name whispered in golden halls and veiled corridors. A man born into power, but not forged by it. He is not weak, but he is uncertain. And uncertainty is fatal in the shadow of Alexander. They gather an army at Issus, a force twice the size of anything Alexander has faced. Some say 3 times. Persian banners flutter in the mountain wind like flames waiting to devour. Elephants, archers, cavalry that stretch from horizon to horizon. Darius sits atop a chariot edged in silver, surrounded by nobles, wives, servants, and his gods. Alexander should turn back. Any sane man would, but he doesn't. He finds high ground instead, studies the terrain, watches the river coil like a blade between the two forces. He knows the Persians outnumber him. He knows the math. He simply chooses to break it. At dawn, the armies face each other. A silence falls before the scream, like the breath before a storm. Then, steel crashes against steel. Shields shatter. Arrows blacken the sky. Alexander rides hard along the right flank, his companion cavalry in a tight wedge behind him, hooves thundering like a heartbeat made of war. He cuts through the line, not around it, but through it. A spear misses his neck by inches. A sword slashes his thigh. Still he pushes. He punches a hole in the Persian formation, turns it inward like a wound forced open. He doesn't chase the soldiers. He doesn't seek the glory. He rides for one man, Darius. The king of Persia sees death approaching and flees, abandons his chariot, leaves behind his shield, leaves behind his wife, his daughters, his honor. And Alexander? He doesn't kill him, not yet. He rides the battlefield in silence afterward, stepping over bodies twisted in dust and fate. The wounded call out. Horses scream. Somewhere the wind shifts. He finds Darius's family, not cowering, not begging, but silent, dignified. His mother bows her head, thinking he is the executioner. Alexander bows back. He calls her queen, speaks gently to the daughters, and orders their protection as if they were his own blood. Not because he's merciful, but because he understands the power of spectacle. Kindness, wielded at the right moment, is sharper than any blade. And now, with Darius in flight and Asia Minor at his feet, the world knows. Alexander is no longer a threat to the Persian Empire. He is its heir apparent, and he is only getting started. The desert has a memory, not like the memory of men, not fleeting, not flawed, but deeper, older, the kind that remembers every hoof that scarred its skin, every boot print swallowed by sand. As Alexander moves south through Syria, the wind carries more than dust. It carries whispers of a Macedonian god-king who carved rivers red and made empires bend. But the deeper he moves into Persian territory, the stranger the silence becomes. Cities still surrender, some gladly, some in fear, but something is changing. The air thickens with incense and unease. Gold flows more freely now, but so does treachery. The roads are lined with veiled eyes and loyal tongues that slip under pressure. Every banquet feels like a trap, every cup of wine a wager. This is not Greece. This is Persia. And Persia plays the long game. In Tyre, the gates remain closed. The city sits like a jewel just off the coast. Proud, fortified, defiant. It is not just a city. It is a statement, a place that believes itself untouchable because it has always been so. It rests on an island, ringed with stone walls, defended by Phoenician pride and centuries of tradition. Alexander sends a message, offers alliance, passage, peace. They refuse, so he builds a road across the sea. It sounds impossible. It is impossible, and yet he does it. Day after day, week after week, he commands the construction of a causeway from the mainland to the city's edge. His men curse him. Engineers weep. Supplies dwindle. But the road rises. The Tyrians mock him, burn his siege towers, dive into the water and sabotage the work by night. Still he builds. 7 months pass. The road reaches the walls. And then he brings war. Battering rams pound the stones like thunder. Siege towers loom like titans. Macedonian archers rain fire from the sky. The city resists, bleeds, breaks. And when it finally falls, it falls hard. Alexander is not merciful this time. He is deliberate. 2,000 are crucified along the shore. A lesson, not in cruelty, but in consequence. The city had time. It made its choice. And so did he. The world watches. And Alexander? He marches on. Gaza is next. A fortress perched above the desert, more sand than stone, but stubborn. The commander, a eunuch loyal to Darius, refuses to surrender. He believes the walls too high, the cliffs too steep, the garrison strong enough. He's wrong. Alexander is injured in the assault, a shoulder wound deep and jagged, a reminder that ambition always has teeth. But he doesn't retreat. He tightens the siege, builds higher towers, piles dirt until his army stands above the defenders and brings the sky down upon them. The city falls, the defenders perish, the lesson repeats. He rides into Egypt with blood on his hands, and Egypt does not resist. They open their arms. To them, he is not a conqueror. He is a liberator, come to break the chains of Persian rule and breathe life back into ancient gods. They crown him pharaoh, cloak him in linen and gold, place him in temples built before his ancestors spoke in full sentences. He accepts it all, not with arrogance, but with that strange, quiet sense of inevitability. He is Greek. He is Macedonian. But now he is something else, too. He travels to the edge of the Sahara, to Shiva, to the Oracle of Amun, a shrine older than myth, buried in silence and sun. He rides alone for stretches. The desert watches him, tests him, blinds him with sandstorms, starves his water skins, almost swallows him whole. And still he arrives. They let him enter the temple alone. No one knows what was said inside. Some claim the priest greeted him as the son of Zeus. Others say the gods confirmed what he already suspected. What he believed? That he was not merely chosen, that he was divine. He leaves Siwa with a new silence in his eyes, a weight, a calm. He says little, plans more. His mind now stretches beyond borders, beyond maps. He sees the world not in kingdoms, but in threads, and he intends to pull every one of them until the fabric rewrites itself. Darius is still alive, still running, still dreaming that the empire can be stitched back together. But Alexander is no longer chasing a man. He's chasing fate, and fate, like the desert, remembers. The wind changes as he turns east again. Gone are the soft coastal breezes of Egypt, the salt air and the open Mediterranean skies. Now the wind smells like copper and dry bone. It stings the eyes, whispers through the cracks of old empire roads, and carries with it the breath of war. Alexander is heading toward the center of the world. Babylon waits in the distance like a sleeping titan, its towers lost in a haze of heat and history. But before he can plant his banner in the heart of Persia, the shadow of Darius rises again. This time the king does not run. At Gaugamela, Darius draws a line in the sand, a real one. He orders the plains near the Tigris flattened, leveled for chariots and maneuvering, preparing for battle the way an old god prepares for judgment. The army he summons is vast. Some say it numbers 500,000. War elephants, scythed chariots, cavalry so wide it seems to stretch from one horizon to the other. Alexander's generals, even Parmenion, the old warhound, are uneasy. The numbers don't lie. The odds are no longer just uneven. They're biblical. But Alexander? He sleeps soundly the night before. When asked how he can rest with such a force gathering just beyond the hills, he answers without blinking. Because they are finally all in one place. He wakes before dawn, dons his armor like a second skin. Not ceremonial, practical, dented, familiar. His horse, Bucephalus, paws the ground like he's been waiting years for this moment. The men watch him, not because they doubt, but because they believe too much. They would follow him into fire, and today they will. The armies face each other beneath a boiling sky. Dust swirls, shields glint. The tension in the air could snap bone. Darius stands in his chariot, flanked by immortals and banners, his face unreadable. He still believes victory is possible, necessary, deserved. Alexander surveys the field. He sees not chaos, but opportunity. The terrain, the lines, the cracks, already forming in the enemy's sheer size. He arranges his phalanx like a blade. The companion cavalry waits at the far right, restless, silent. Then he moves. He doesn't strike forward. He drifts diagonally, drawing Darius's cavalry to the flank, away from the center. The Persian line begins to stretch, pull, thin. It's not a mistake. It's bait. When the moment opens, Alexander seizes it. He turns hard left, leads his cavalry straight into the gap like a dagger through silk. Macedonian infantry crash forward behind him. Spears rise like teeth. The air fills with blood and metal and screaming. He carves his way toward the king. Again. But this time Darius doesn't wait. He flees faster than before. Leaves his chariot. Leaves his army. Leaves behind the crown and the weight of every empire he ever failed to hold together. The Persian line collapses. Not because it is weak, but because it is leaderless. Because Alexander has pierced not just the army, but the idea of Persian invincibility. The center cannot hold. The earth trembles with the fall of something ancient. Victory is complete. Not just a battle, a rebirth. In the aftermath, Alexander walks the battlefield alone. The silence is thick, the kind that presses on the lungs. Bodies litter the plains. Horses groan in their last moments. The dust doesn't settle. It mourns. He doesn't gloat, doesn't celebrate. He simply walks, as if he's measuring the price of what he's becoming. He could stop now. Most would. He has the East. The empire lies shattered. Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis await him with open gates and treasures untold. Gold enough to drown 1,000 kings. Statues carved in his honor. Cities already whispering his name like prayer. But Alexander isn't here for riches. He isn't here for monuments. He's chasing a ghost. And somewhere beyond these broken fields, Darius still runs. Still clings to what little remains of a crown. And Alexander? He won't rest until the world is stitched into one name. His. The road to Persepolis is paved in silence. Not the kind born of peace, but the breathless quiet that follows a scream. Villages pass in a blur. Markets stand empty. The wind here is heavy with ash, as if it already knows what's coming. Alexander marches not with urgency, but with inevitability. The victory at Gaugamela has split the Persian Empire open like a fault line, and everything west of the Zagros Mountains now tilts toward him. Babylon opened its gates. Susa offered its treasuries. The world seems to be kneeling, not out of love, but gravity. Still, Persepolis remains, the capital of capitals, the soul of Persia, a city that was never meant to fall. He arrives in winter. The cold does not bother him. The snow makes the palaces seem cleaner, almost sacred. But Alexander is not here for reverence. He's here for reckoning. Persepolis stands on a platform above the land, a stone terrace carved by kings who believed they were gods. The great Apadana, its royal audience hall, is held aloft by columns that reach toward the heavens, as if the sky itself might lean down to listen. Reliefs on the walls show nations bringing tribute: Greeks, Medes, Ethiopians, Scythians, Indians, a parade of submission carved in timeless stone. And now, the conqueror they tried to tame has come to collect. The people of Persepolis surrender quickly. There is no battle, no last stand. The city's guards melt away. The priests lower their heads. The city folds like a letter handed over in silence. Alexander enters the palace of Xerxes like a shadow moving through a dream. Riches fill every hall, not just gold, but history. Scrolls, statues, silk. Jewels that once adorned kings who ruled the earth. Tapestries older than the Greek alphabet. Incense thick enough to choke memory. He takes it all, catalogs it, guards it. But something else stirs in him here, something darker. The weight of revenge. For decades, Greeks have told tales of what the Persians did to Athens, of how Xerxes burned the Acropolis, desecrated temples, slaughtered civilians. They say fire remembers. And here, in the heart of Persia's glory, Alexander remembers too. And then, a feast, a great one, the kind that echoes for centuries. Macedonian soldiers, Persian captives, philosophers, dancers, generals. The wine flows like prophecy. Women move like smoke. The palace pulses with heat, music, and power. And in the center, Alexander, crowned not just in gold, but in contradiction. He has decided which one must set. And it's there, in the blur between celebration and something more feral, that someone, maybe Thais, the Athenian courtesan, raises a cup and says, "Let us return the favor. Let us burn the palace of Xerxes." A joke, maybe, or maybe a challenge. The story fractures here. Some say Alexander hesitated. Others claim he leapt to his feet with a torch already in hand. Maybe he thought it would bring closure. Maybe he simply wanted to feel something that gold couldn't give. But by night's end, the sky above Persepolis is on fire. Flames lick the stars. The stone columns glow red like molten bones. The Apadana crackles. Ash rises into the night like broken prayers. Alexander watches from a nearby hill, his face unreadable. The city does not scream. It sighs, long and low, like a memory being erased. Some say he regretted it immediately, that he returned in silence the next morning, walked through the blackened ruins, and wept. That he knew he had burned not just a city, but a symbol, a past too ancient to rebuild. Others say he never flinched, that the fire was necessary, that something had to be sacrificed for the future to rise. But the truth? The truth is in the silence, and silence clings to him like smoke as he turns east again. Darius is still out there, fleeing through the mountains, through the veins of what remains of his kingdom. His power is a ghost, his allies scattered, but he's still king, still wearing the name. And Alexander, he can't let that stand, not because of pride, but because there can't be two suns in the same sky. And the mountains of Media are cold, cruel, and full of shadows. The further east Alexander marches, the thinner the line becomes between war and obsession. The great cities of Persia have fallen. The treasure halls are his. The empire, in name, already bows to him. But still, he pushes forward, chasing a man who has already lost everything except his heartbeat. Darius, the former king of kings, now flees with what few loyalists remain, slipping through high passes and old loyalties like a ghost with a crown. His entourage dwindles. His hope collapses. But he refuses to surrender. Pride? Perhaps. Or maybe he still believes that the world can be turned back, that from ruins he can rise again. Alexander gives him no such comfort. He moves fast now, faster than any army this size should be able to move. His men, hardened by years of marching and blood, follow him with a kind of grim loyalty. They don't understand why they're still chasing Darius. They only know that he needs them to. It isn't strategy anymore. It's destiny. And then word comes. Near a place called Hekatompelos, messengers arrive with a whisper of betrayal. Darius is no longer running from Alexander, but from his own men. Bessus, a satrap of Bactria, a Persian noble, a former ally, a man with ambition sharper than steel. He's turned on Darius, arrested him, declared himself the new king of kings, a puppet of resistance clothed in royal pretense. It's not just treason, it's theater. Bessus hopes to rally the eastern provinces, to ignite one last flame of defiance. But more than that, he wants to offer Alexander a broken Darius, humiliated, shackled, forgotten. Alexander hears this and doesn't rage. He grows cold. He no longer sees Darius as a rival, but as a mirror. A man who tried to hold the world and lost it. A man who once stood tall, now hunted like an animal by those who once kissed his hand. This is not how a king should die. So he rides, day and night, through desert and mountain. Minimal rest, barely any food. At one point he's so exhausted he falls asleep mid-gallop, body swaying with the rhythm of his horse. And then, one morning, they find him, Darius, left in the dirt of a roadside camp by his captors, stabbed, abandoned, wrapped in royal rags, soaked with his own blood. Still breathing, barely. His eyes are open, but distant, as if watching stars only he can see. Alexander kneels beside him. No fanfare, no victory cry, just silence. He lifts the dying king's head into his lap, offers him water, a word, a name. But Darius can no longer speak. His mouth moves, but only the wind listens. And then he dies. There, in the dirt. Not on a throne, not in a palace, but in the arms of the man who chased him across half the world. Some say Alexander wept. Others say he whispered a prayer in Greek and called Darius his brother. What is certain is this: he ordered Darius buried with royal honors, cloaked in silk, guarded by silence. And then he turned his eyes to Bessus, to the traitor who stole his vengeance. And the hunt began again. But this wasn't like before. This wasn't conquest. It was correction. Alexander crosses into Bactria like a storm wearing a crown. Villages scatter. Satraps submit. He doesn't just pursue Bessus. He dismantles him. Strips away his support. Bleeds his army from the edges. Turns his name into a curse whispered in empty streets. Bessus flees deeper into the highlands. Tries to rally locals. Tries to claim legitimacy. But the weight of Alexander's fury is too vast. Eventually, his own men betray him, bind him, gag him, and deliver him like a warning. Alexander takes him, but doesn't execute him. Not immediately. Instead, he puts him on trial, a performance as much as a punishment. Before an assembly of Persians, Greeks, and former allies, Bessus is stripped of his titles, his dignity, his illusion. Then, only then, is he executed. Not by a sword, not by poison, but by dismemberment. The Persian way. The world watches, horrified, awed. Alexander says nothing. His eyes are steady, unreadable. A part of him dies with Darius. Another part sharpens, hardens, becomes something else. Because now there's no one left to chase, only the horizon, and the question that's been whispering all along. What happens when the world has no more kings left to conquer? He doesn't answer. He simply turns east. The land stretches endlessly now. No more familiar cities, no ancient names, just dust, silence, and sky. Alexander keeps moving. Through deserts that drink the blood of men. Across rivers that have never seen bronze. Into valleys where his name means nothing. His army, once a choir of thunder, has grown quieter, wearier. They follow him still, but with questions in their eyes. What are we conquering now? Who are we fighting? But Alexander doesn't stop. He can't. He takes Bactria, then Sogdiana, then lands so far from Greece they don't appear on any of Aristotle's maps. He marries Roxana, a local noble's daughter, not for alliance, but love, some say. A rare softness in a man made of iron. But even that doesn't slow him. Even love becomes a thread sewn into the ever-widening tapestry of empire. He builds cities, Alexandria after Alexandria, carving his name into the bones of the earth. He takes men from every culture, trains them, arms them, folds them into a vision of unity the world isn't ready for. But it's not peace. It's never peace. He fights the Scythians, then the tribes beyond the Hindu Kush, then the elephants of India, beasts so massive they carry towers into battle. At the Hydaspes River, he faces King Porus, who meets him not with fear, but majesty. They clash beneath monsoon skies, water up to the knees, elephants crashing through spears like storms. It's one of Alexander's bloodiest battles. And yet, when it ends, he doesn't humiliate Porus. He honors him, makes him an ally, a friend, because Alexander no longer sees enemies, only pieces of a world not yet whole. But his men, the ones who crossed deserts and mountains and time itself for him, begin to break. In the monsoon rains, they beg to return home, to wives, to children they've never met, to a sun that rises from the west, not the east. They weep, they kneel. And for the first time, Alexander listens. He turns back, not in defeat, but in reflection. The road home is long, brutal, and cruel. He loses more men to heat and thirst than to any sword. Some say it was the gods punishing his pride. Others say the earth itself was trying to swallow the boy who thought he could hold the sky. When he returns to Babylon, it's not with triumph, but weariness. He's 32, and though the world is his, something in him is already fading. He speaks of new plans, new conquests, Arabia, the far seas, but his voice grows thinner, his body weaker. He collapses with fever. Days pass in a haze of muttering, shaking silence. When they ask him, "To whom shall the empire go?" he whispers, "To the strongest." Then he dies. No empire like his has ever risen again. None lasted. None could. But his shadow still lingers. In maps, in language, in bloodlines and ruins. His name, carved in 1,000 stones. His legend, larger than history can carry. Because Alexander the Great wasn't just a man. He was a question the world is still trying to answer. What does it mean to want everything, and what does it cost to get it? Thanks for staying with me on this journey. If you're still here, maybe in the quiet hours of the night, headphones on, heart full, take a moment to let it settle. Breathe it in. The dust, the blood, the firelight on stone. And if you felt something, if the story moved you, made you think, or just kept you company for a while, consider subscribing. But only if it feels right. No pressure. Leave a comment. Tell me where you watched from, what time it is, what you felt. And before you go, dim the lights one more time. Let the silence hold you. And remember, some legends don't end. They echo.